Welcome back to another exceptional installment of the This Week in Fantasy series. I'm your host of the last 9 years, VenomousStare, and with me is the fabled, the anointed, the old head, the incredibly talented and funny Ben, King of Funny Rogers, tied for first place in his division. Benny boy, what do you have to say?
I don't have much to say other than I'm really concerned about Aaron's lack of effort. He was the one saying that I was, kind of fading out of existence in this league, but he's the only person that's 0-3 that yet has a win, and he has to play Spencer this week, I believe. So, good luck, buddy, but doing good. Glad to be on. Thanks for having me.
Well, Ben, it's exceptional to have you on this episode. You've been an OG of the league for a long time. And even though it was sort of funny shit talk, I think where we should start in this episode is Aaron's loss, because last year Aaron is a guy who had an incredible amount of points put up, a guy who had just an incredible regular season showing. And this season he's really been struggling. 0-3. And we can take a look at his matchup versus Cameron here, the historically lowest winning percentage record holder regular season-wise in this league. Not that I even have to mention regular season with that stat, because the motherfucker's never made the playoffs. You look at his dad, made the playoffs, intelligent owner who has a lot of respect, and his sister, who even though she might not have as much respect, won a Super Bowl and certainly deserves it, but Cameron himself is just really in a tough spot, and he took it to old Aaron last week, even though that the week before he had started Antonio Brown, the Tennessee receiver who was ruled out days before. Cameron put up around 100 this week, looked better, but Dak and Chimera really carried his team. Cameron has a really top-heavy team. He doesn't do a good job of managing the lower 7 or so people. I just want to hear your thoughts on this game, all memes aside, because Aaron was down a very small amount going into Monday Night Football, or was that last week? Yeah, that was last week. My bad.
Last week.
But it's hard to keep all the Aaron losses straight. Last year he was exceptional, and this year the guy can't stop losing. So they run together a little bit for me. But Connor had 20 for Rampy. Dalvin Cook had 20 plus. And a big part of the TWIF last week was me saying that Minnesota would struggle, and pretty much all of their fantasy options did well, but they did in fact lose the game, so I was sort of splitting the difference in terms of being wrong and being right there. But Aaron loses a humiliating loss versus Cameron here, and it's not just humiliating because it's Cam, not to put Cam down too much, not that he would even watch a second of these videos, but this is brutal for Aaron to go down 0-3. Benny, let me hear your thoughts on going down 0-3 against a division of 2-1 people. How hard is that to come back from?
Well, to mention that point with how hard it is to come back from it, it's almost insurmountable. If you win the next 3, you're just then back at 500. And, there's, especially in a season like in football, where there's only 16 games in a season, and then in our league, there's, in fantasy leagues, there's only 14 regular season games. So every win even means even more than it usually does. And that's what makes these gut-wrenching, close, late Monday night decisions so, sickening to fantasy owners. But when I look at this matchup, I'm really impressed with how Cameron's team, he just put out decent production. There's a few duds, but when I look at Aaron's team, even though there's a lot of holes, his running backs really do scare me with Dalvin Cook and Aaron Jones, because those are two guys that can just both get 20 plus every week and not even bat an eye.
Very high ceiling guys, the guys who can put up a shitload of points, just an absurd amount, like 35 plus point guys, with Cook getting all the looks in his offense and Aaron Jones getting a lot of red zone looks. Those two guys are scary. I completely agree with you. Please proceed.
And then to mention having James Conner as his flex. His running backs this game scored him 59.4 points compared to Cameron's running back scoring him 35.5. So like that alone could have been the end all for this game, and that could have got Aaron a win. But Cameron's team, solid production. Nothing outstanding. Like I said, Mike Williams 1.7. Even his wide receivers just getting 5 and 6. But hey, sometimes in order to win a fantasy game, you need those players just to get 5 or 6 and not just have duds and zeros. So kudos to Cameron, because as many holes, like I said, that Aaron has, I do like his running backs, and that alone makes him a formidable opponent each week, despite the jokes.
For me, the thing that sticks out for this game is Gardner Minshew's performance. Minshew was a player who had sort of a poor man's Russell Wilson stat line of high completion percentage, low interception total, low risk over the first 2 weeks. He's playing Miami, an in-state rival regarded as inept, and he completely craps the bed for Rampy, getting less than 10. Rampy's quarterback on his bench, Jared Goff, who hadn't been doing as well as Minshew, got him 20 plus and would have won the game. So this is a vexing game for Aaron. And does Cameron even know he wins? I don't want to be mean-spirited or talk down to Cameron or condescending, but it is very frustrating to think about how it's not even a call at the Watsons per se, it's Cameron specifically. Cameron seems to not care about this as much as everyone else in the league, to the point where he doesn't check his roster in week 2 or week 3, or whatever it was. I can't even keep track of it at this point because it's happened so much. But
week 2, against me.
Yeah, with the Titans receiver. But personally, it just bothers me to see that. And week 2 inactivity, there's no excuse for. You're not 0-8 with bye week issues. That's just fraud, plain and simple.
To be fair, though, I don't blame Aaron for starting Minshew over
No,
Goff.
I don't think it was a bad decision either, but it was certainly one that bit him in his ass.
A horrid performance, like you said, by Minshew against a defense that is just terrible. So, yeah, really, that did screw over Aaron really bad.
And I actually watched the highlights of that game. There were a lot of problems in terms of sort of mid-range passes being deflected and a little bit of bad luck with Minshew. This isn't one of those games where you look and it's like, wow, he got figured out. This was definitely one of those games where you look at and just sort of dismiss, like, yeah, he had an interception and a fumble, but he was getting hella pressured the entire game, and it was really difficult. So let's move on. I think it's worth noting Dak Prescott had a huge week again, despite the fact that I thought he wouldn't do as well. He did do very well again with 27. So
yeah, don't have to remind me, because that week 2 he had 3 goal line QB
rushes,
touchdowns and 450 passing touchdowns, 450 passing yards. He had 39.8 last week. 39.8. So yeah, Cameron has some heavy hitters, but like you said, let's move on.
What's funny to me is I've been doing this podcast for 9 years, Benny Boy, from solo episodes with Hyper Cam, like it was a RuneScape P-King video, to trying to grandfather the series over to you. I've watched Cameron play fantasy football for over a decade, and I can say that even though he's doing well now, once bye weeks hit, shit will hit the fan. What do you think about that statement? Do you agree or disagree?
Oh, yeah, I definitely do agree, because it's sad too, because in the history of our league, obviously we've had duds when it comes to members who haven't been active, which is why we removed them. But as far as it goes with people that we know and that we're actually, have relationships with, Cameron is like in a league of his own when it comes to his management, because, like you said, you don't even know if he checks his games after. You don't even know if he checks his lineup. Well, we know that, and it hurts me whenever I care so much about these games. Which, call me a nerd all you want. I care a lot about these fantasy games, which is why Aaron's jab about my effort pissed me off. But Cameron just, it seems to Cameron doesn't even matter at all, and it frustrates me that a guy cannot even start his a wide receiver
week
and
2.
he still beats me, and he probably didn't even check it. And meanwhile, I'm losing my mind. I'm sick to my stomach. The Stars just lost, like you mentioned last week. Like I was literally just ready to throw up. And
Cameron doesn't even know he won. He's sitting there with the W, fucking working, not even knowing.
Cameron's probably jerking off to Marvel movies. I don't know what the fuck he does on a Sunday. So
I would just love to see Cameron be more active. And even if he is the worst owner, win percentage wise, I would love to see Cameron run his mouth a little, steal the odd win, talk a bit of shit, go 1-1 in the season series, but eliminate the person from the playoffs, and really take his victories there, because I'm a guy who reaches out to Cameron on a weekly basis, and not even related to fantasy football, just trying to talk to him. And Cameron is one of those friends that is just simply hard to get a hold of. He's sort of like a Cody Seals, where he doesn't necessarily answer his phone very well. So he's a guy who's hard to get a gauge on in terms of how he feels about the season, despite having a winning record.
And one thing to wrap this up before I move on to the next game is just I want to say how big of this is to me or No Fried, because the top of the division, all 2-1, me, Cameron, and No Fried. And like you just mentioned, Cameron's management, especially when bye weeks start to hit, is putrid. So I expect this win, which could have gave Aaron his first win very easily. It puts one of the more better managers in my division in an 0-3 hole to start off the non-conference. And it's kind of big for me and No Fried because it kind of narrows it down a little bit, because I don't think Cameron's going to be in contention later on.
Well, you make a great point, and no matter how much leeway you want to give Cameron or how much credit you want to give Cameron, I've been doing this show for 9 years with a target audience of 12 people, and I've seen Cameron start out 2-1, start out hotter than you would expected, have a team of his score 85 plus the first 3 weeks, year after year after year, and it's not consistent because he doesn't have the free agent management and the waiver wire micro to keep it going.
Let's just say this: the only consistent about Cameron's management style is that it's inconsistent.
Well, I agree with that, but it's very important that we don't just cast Cameron off.
Oh no, he has Kamara, which can go off for 40 every week, and Dak, who can go off for 40. So I'm not. I'm not saying anything against Cameron's team.
I don't mean write him off in that way. I mean, we don't want to write him off as a person, even though that over the past 10 years, history has proven that to be true, and he has managed poorly than the other users, including his little sister. So it really pains me to sit here and be like, Cameron has done this for the past 10 years, expect it again, but it's the fact of the matter. Don't expect Cameron to hit on big free agent guys off the waiver wire or do any long shot moves or any big trades. It's pretty vexing to cover Cameron in this format as a sort of journalist or reporter, because the guy doesn't do anything and he pretty much doesn't comment on anything. Even if I were to say, Cameron, Weston's offering you Julio Jones and 2 other guys for this one player, would you accept? Like, I couldn't get an answer from him, and that's very frustrating.
Yeah, Cameron, he just needs to start putting in effort, because I think he has a good team, and I love Cameron as a person, but God, and if it wasn't my division and I was playing him whenever I had that game when he didn't start a wide receiver, I'd be bitching. But no, I mean, it was against me, so of course I was hoping that he didn't.
Well, the funny thing about Cameron is he'll never watch a minute of TWIF, but I'm the guy he always beats. I'm like the only guy he has a winning record against, so that's sort of a funny little, I don't even know what you would call it.
Fun fact.
It's just a little factoid, but
little tidbit.
Something Spencer would call luck, but something I call funny. And if we just scroll over to your match versus No Fried, as we stick with the themes of the division here, you had a very solid week. Josh Allen, the rare white running quarterback, doing well for you. Kareem Hunt continued to finding the end zone Nick Chubb, continuing to finding the end zone despite the fact that Nick Chubb has gotten his touches. I mean, you looked really sharp here, Ben, despite the opponent putting up over 100 and you took the W. This is after a week in which you took your sole loss, putting up over 100, and Cameron just popping off. I want you to hear your perspective as the owner. What did you think going into this game, and what did you think after the game? Please give me your full thoughts.
Well, going into it, especially with that Thursday night, I was kind of wary, because my flex Keelan Cole, as we mentioned in that terrible Jacksonville performance, didn't do very well on that Thursday night game. Only got 43 yards. So I was kind of worried going into it, thinking that, man, I'm already going to be a little bit down in points. But the rest of my team has really filled out well for the rest of the season. Josh Allen was a 9th round pick, and he's performing like he's a top 3 quarterback right now in fantasy stats. And then Chubb has just been consistent. I wasn't really happy with Mixon's output so far, so that's why I traded for David Johnson. He hasn't been killing it yet, but I still have more hope for him than Mixon. And honestly, I think my wide receivers, even though I have a lot of them, I think I have some pretty good ones, because Mike Evans only got 2 catches for 2 yards, but they were both touchdowns. Scary Terry getting consistent targets, consistent yards on a week-to-week basis with a shitty quarterback.
He's the only one in our offense that's ever going to get touches. That's a great pick from my perspective. And
Hunter Henry does what I always expect him to, get at least 5 or 6 minimum base, which is all I can really ask for out of a tight end. So I'm really, really happy with my team's performance this week, because I've seen good performances like start off the season and they've just kind of falter off. But right now it looks like my team is headed in the right direction.
Well, let me give you my TLDR as an impartial viewer. I look at Jared Allen. I look at a guy that is quickly developing into a top-tier fantasy quarterback.
Josh Allen.
Josh Allen. I don't know. What did I say?
Jared.
Excuse me. Josh Allen, the white guy for the Bills that everybody likes, that loves to do lateral moves in playoff games. I mean, this guy's decision-making is dog shit, but he is really an explosive player that's fun to watch. I just love to watch the Bills, man. Him and Singletary, they've got a solid defense. That's a team that I think is going to make some noise in the first and second round of the playoffs, but never the Super Bowl.
Plus, adding Diggs has really helped so far with the passing game. Cole Beasley has been opened up, which is on my bench because of it.
That's so true. Cole Beasley last year was virtually a non-factor because there was no number 1 threat. And now that's not the case, so you have that going on for the Bills, which is nice. It hurts Singletary's value just a little, but you don't rely on him, so who gives a motherfuck? And then you have Nick Chubb, who a lot of people would qualify the Browns as being, pass first, Baker Mayfield, No. Like, these motherfuckers run the ball 25 plus times a game.
Who wouldn't when you have Kareem?
They've got Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And they really ground and pound and are really proving to be a consistently scoring offensive running back pairing. One of the few running back pairings, timeshare-wise, you can actually look at and say, oh, well, they're both good. Like, they're both worth starting.
Because as you have Kareem, so we both can say how productive they've been this year.
And you have the other. Much. To me, Chubb is the primary back. Kareem gets about 30% of the touches and he gets the goal line carries, which is important in fantasy because, as we both know, a touchdown really does help set off a lot. So,
don't know if you remember Lindale White, the guy who scored like 17 rushing touchdowns for the Titans and had like 400 yards rushing. So
former USC player who, of course, was playing right next to Reggie Bush, the 2006 NCAA Impact player, which we both loved. Reggie Bush and all of his escalades. So,
one thing I do want to mention, though, real quick before we move on, or look at No Fried's side of it too, but I just wanted to say is that compared to last year's draft, where I may have made one of the worst draft blunders in drafting Aaron Rodgers first round, which is one of the biggest reaches ever, I think I honestly did a reverse this year, getting Josh Allen in the 9th round, because it did let me focus on my other positions, and Josh Allen has been performing like I drafted him like he was Patrick Mahomes in the first round. So
well, that's a great point, Benny boy, because Josh Allen, with all of his rushing yards and his time on an offense that doesn't have to face Tom Brady anymore in division games, that was a great pick by you, man. This is a guy that, even though he only got 8 rush yards last week, this is a guy who has a very, very high floor, and a guy who, because of his rushing yards, can just really put up high numbers. And David Johnson, or is that Duke Johnson? I can never remember. It's David Johnson because it was from the Cardinals. Yeah, David Johnson.
Like Duke Johnson is his backup.
Right, that's why it's confusing. But your David Johnson pick is incredible because Bill O'Brien pounds the ball. And then, of course, Nick Chubb is good because he gets the majority of the carries, even though Kareem Hunt still has value. And when I look at guys like Evan and McLaurin, they're number 1 options of their offense. And even though Evans suddenly has a lot more options to compete with, you have a pretty goddamn solid team. So, frankly, I would not be surprised if you made the fucking playoffs, man. I think your team looks solid. But let's move on to the second division, where Spencer, in a narrow game, lost to Austin. This was a very exciting game. You know, Ben, you did such a good job of leading the last game's lead-in. I want to hear what you have to think about this game to open your thoughts again as well, please. It's AB.
Yeah,
AB's game.
Really solid game by Austin again. I know that we hated on his draft at the beginning of the year, but a lot of these picks that he's made that we were kind of questionable about have really paid off. Clyde's Edward-Helaire has been a clear number one back in an offense that's always going to usually produce. I recommended Austin pick up Robinson off the waiver wire right after the draft, and I had no idea that he would be producing this much for him. Otherwise, I probably would have picked him up myself, because he has been a revelation for this team and really been a linchpin holding it together.
Well, this is a guy who stomped right in and took claims of Leonard Fournette and really pounded the ball with efficiency, man.
Yeah, and another solid week by Kyler. His wide receivers are just insane. I mean, I can't believe his depth at wide receiver with Tyreek, Juju, Ty. I mean, those three right there alone are probably the best three wide receivers on a team.
Even better than Spencer's, Thomas and Adams?
Yeah, I think so. I honestly think so.
Spencer might have a little less depth, but he's a little more top-heavy, you know.
Especially if Ty, gets more into the passing game, which I think he will later on, because I'm still high on Phillip Rivers, at least when it comes to passing yards.
Well, Benny boy, will Phillip Rivers ever really truly identify T.Y. Hilton as the number one option, or will that be a thing of the Andrew Luck days?
No, I think he will. I feel like no matter how much, I don't care who's at quarterback. Talent is still talent at wide receiver, no matter how much chemistry that you have with someone. And I mean, they could literally have their third string in there, and I still think that they would give Ty targets. So Ty is one of the best vertical deep threat wide receivers that this league has, and the fact that he hasn't popped off yet is just showing me that Austin's team has a huge upside and a huge ceiling, because if his third option at wide receiver is not popping off yet and he's still 2-1, his team still has room to improve, which is kind of scary.
Yeah, to me what jumps out from this matchup is that Spencer really had to start people who he didn't really expect to have to start in his opening week. Spencer didn't really have to start people who he thought would be mainstays of his team. And
Thomas out, Mostert out, Adams out.
Right.
Those three right there, that's crazy.
He had to pick up Traquan Smith, who ended up failing along with Samuel. And to me, even though Spencer did pretty much every right maneuver in this game, and some things broke his way, like Michael Gallup having a very good day, Spencer is really hamstrung by his receiver injuries. And both of these guys, you know, it's not like they both blew their knee out. These guys are going to come back soon. But if I had to write this loss off, I would just pencil it straight up to the receivers, even though Gallup got it 20.
Well, and Spencer, his number two top scoring player this week was literally his kicker, Mason Crosby.
That's very true.
I mean, like we all know Spencer's a great manager, but if he's gonna fucking have his second top scorer be a kicker, like, you know, it's not gonna be a good week, and you're not gonna have a high chance of winning.
Yeah, if I look at Spencer's team on paper, the bread and butter of his team is Thomas and Adams. They gotta light up 30 plus. And if those guys are healthy and they're not ready to go, it's really down to Spencer's management. And we saw Spencer's management shine through here. He managed to queef out 90 plus. It wasn't enough to win, but it was by no means embarrassing performance. And I think that in the future, Spencer will be much more lethal. For instance, whenever he eventually faces me in the middle of the year, Thomas and Adams will be healthy. This is not a guy that you're going to look at and be like, well, his best weapons are hurt. If you're Austin this week, this is a player that you look at and say to yourself, well, his best weapons are hurt. I'd love to face him this week as opposed to in 10 weeks. So even though Spencer put up 90 plus, I look at this team from Austin and say, Robinson, great pickup. And you know what, Ben, if you told me to pick that guy up, more power to you, brother. But if you knew that information If you knew Kareem,
well, yeah, no,
if you knew
I didn't know that
Fournette
he
was
gonna be
gone
that good.
and he was going to be that dude, you might have wanted to pick him up for yourself. But
well, yeah, I thought he was going to get maybe at like 50% of this, like the timeshare, or maybe a little bit more. I had no idea that he was going to be this outstanding for the Jags. I mean, I honestly, great. It's a steal for Austin. I mean, that guy right there could be the make or break guy for this season, just based off of that. It was an undrafted player, and he has so much more talented throughout his roster too.
Well, to me, that's the standout player I look at, is a guy who jumps out at me from being on this roster. Because I know Austin, obviously. I know he's a Chiefs guy. I know he's a Tech guy. See Kyler Murray, coached by a Texas Tech coach, Cliff Kingsbury. I see Edwards and Hill. These are not Tech guys, but Chiefs guys, Mahomes guys. And then I see top-name receivers like Smith-Schuster, and I see the Saints, who have been good for a decade, their special teams. So there's not a lot here that jumps out at me and says, like, oh, well, Austin really knew, like, the deep cuts. Like, Robinson was such a big part of his team because the rest of it is boom or bust and team-related. To have a guy like Robinson guaranteed to get a lot of touches and a lot of looks is just massive for AB's team. And considering Kyler Murray is part of an air raid offense, that highly limits his floor. So even though Austin lost me this week, I'm looking at his team and feeling pretty good.
One last point that I want to bring up about Austin's team before I wrap it up on his team is that his trade with his flex player was Malcolm Brown, who he just, like I said, recently acquired. Who did he trade with again for
Zach
Brown?
Zach Ertz.
That's right. I really do think. I mean, even though Zach Ertz is a tight end and tight ends can be inconsistent at times, I think he won that trade because looking at Malcolm Brown's output, he had that 23 points that first week, and he has a combined 6 in these past 2 weeks. So he's going to have to figure out that flex position, which I think he easily can looking at his bench. But just wanted to point out that trade acquisition didn't pan out this week for him.
I think that's an intelligent point to make, Benny Boy. But I also think that when I look at the trade in general, Spencer took a definite need he had at his team, and he got Zach Ertz. And and you got to remember, Benny Boy, Dallas Goedert got hurt, the other Phillies tight end. So Zach Ertz's value skyrockets for Spencer. Who else is fucking Carson Wentz boy Ginger Worthless gonna throw to? He doesn't have any other options, man. Aguilar's fucking gone. So I look at an option like Zach Ertz, and I look at the Dallas Goedert injury, and I just lick my lips if I'm Spencer. So Spencer loses here, but maybe he wins in the long term, considering how many looks that my Rams running back, Darrell Henderson, got. What do you think about that, Benny Boy?
Kind of a trade that I like. I don't know how it's going to pan out. It's one of those trades that can go either way for both of y'all, but I like the acquisition of Henderson for you because I do see a lot of upside.
I traded Henderson, remember?
Or excuse me.
Henderson for Tyler Boyd, and
I do like Henderson, but I also do like Tyler Boyd a lot, and I saw that you got him, and let's go ahead. I was kind of impressed.
Let's move on to that trade, because clearly we saw the trade between AB regarding the Rams running back go a certain way, but we saw a very recent trade where I dealt the very hot Darrell Henderson for the #1 receiver of the Bengals, Tyler Boyd. And if you remember me as a fantasy player, yes, because if you look at AJ Green hasn't done shit. He's a guy that has looked completely over the hill. He's a guy that has looked useless. And if you look at targets, Tyler Boyd has been the guy. Tyler Boyd has been the guy that Joe Burrow has gotten comfortable with. And that's why I made the trade. Because I think by the mid-season, Boyd is going to be the consistent #1 target option.
And that's one of the reasons I traded away Joe Mixon, because I felt like they were going to pass the ball a lot with what's his name?
Burrow.
Backup. Burrows, yes. Because I thought they would give Joe. I mean, Joe Mixon was already heavily used last year, but I thought they were going to use him more. And to be completely fair, I was wrong because Joe Burrow is, I think, like top 6 right now in fantasy rankings at quarterback, or 7.
Yeah,
and he also has some of the most. Yeah, some of the most. Yeah, I think he has the most attempts in the league. So they've been throwing the ball all around there in Cincinnati. So to your point, Tyler Boyd will be a really good. Or he already is the good option, but I think like he'll only progress more down the road.
Two things you have to consider: Mixon was never any more than a mid-tier guy who had his hype overrated because of sort of speculated usage rating, and only players who are in the 12th, 13th, or 14th spot in fantasy really wanted to fuck with taking this Mixon guy more than for sort of obligation than anything else. And now we see the situation playing out, and it's very troubling for a lot of fantasy owners, Benny boy.
Yeah, it really is, but I mean, only time will tell, because I still think AJ Green has time to bounce back from last year's injury, but I still think Boyd's a good pickup, and knowing what your needs were as a team, I see as a really solid trade for both teams.
Okay, 2 questions then. A, who won the trade, Weston or me? And B, is AJ Green over the hill and done? I want your honest takes on both. I don't care if you hate on me in both.
First, well, I'll just answer the AJ Green one first. No, I don't think he's over the hill. I do think that he's diminished compared to his past self, but I still think that he has plenty of left in the tank, especially with a quarterback like Joe Burrow's, who they're both locked up for the next 4 or 5 years together. So they're gonna have some time to get used to each other. And then secondly, I think you won the trade, because as much as I do like Henderson right now, I think he's the kind of player that kind of explodes at the beginning of the year, has a lot of publicity around him. Excuse me, especially around his usage rate too, because I mean, who else is going to get the ball other than what's his name? So I mean, there's a definite chance he's going to get the ball a lot, but I think he's going to be one of those players that's going to diminish point value week by week throughout the season. Meanwhile, I think Boyd is consistent, and I think he might put up even more points than he already has. So I think if you look at the upsides of both players, I really do like Boyd's upside more than Henderson's.
To me, when I traded for Boyd, I thought 2 things. Weston is really weak running back wise, and he has Cam Akers, who is hurt. So he probably already wants the fucking Rams guy who is going to play in place of him. And he already has Boyd, who he's benching / flexing. And even though Boyd has been putting a little bit above 10 points each week, I feel like he will be the primary target of the Bungles. So that's why I traded for Boyd.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think it's a good trade for you.
Well, Spencer pointed out that if Akers and Brown continue to be hurt, then Henderson could have a lot of upside for Weston. So you can definitely see why Weston traded for that player as well. But
oh yeah, I mean, there's upside for both. I just think Boyd's is way more.
But now that we've covered those matchups, we can go ahead and we need to finish previewing the previous matchups, right? We didn't completely cover everyone's. We just covered yours.
Yeah,
plus Spencer's and AB. So, clap for Bacon. I remember now, by the way. Clap for Bacon.
And Aaron's, don't forget Aaron.
Yeah, of course. Clap for Bacon took advantage of Jackson. Of course, these two had a huge rivalry preseason with a lot of mouth running and contention, but Clap for puts up a solid 98 and takes down Jackson here. You know, Benny boy, I just want to get your thoughts on what you think about this contentious rivalry and the conclusion. It wasn't week 1 or 2, but they're still division rivals.
I love the tension. The more juice and heat there are in a rivalry, obviously the better. Which, especially when it comes to division rivalries. So, I love the off-season banter and the pre-draft banter. But unfortunately, compared to Austin's draft analysis that we made, saying that he was going to be the second worst, and we were wrong so far. We were completely right about Jackson's draft right now, because I don't know, his team still to me is just not. It just does not look filled out, and just I don't know. It just doesn't have a lot of upside to me. Honestly.
It does have a lot of holes in it, doesn't it? Like Chris Carson, who I had last year, who's very inconsistent and got hurt this week on a dirty play, really.
Yeah, and even I mean, I love Calvin Ridley. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not a huge lover of Woods, just because I'm not a huge lover of Goff, to be fair. Noah Fant I actually like as a tight end, but
really,
production-wise, because he's really talented. Like, he's a really, really good receiving tight end. It's just they haven't had the quarterback that has been good with him or has stayed healthy enough to be with him. So, last night they just started their third quarterback in 3 games. So, of course, there's going to be a little bit of drop-off when it comes to Denver's wide receivers or tight ends.
Well, that's a great Colorado take, Benny boy. Keep going.
But because I do think Fant has a huge amount of upside. Like, his first week, he had 8 catches for 90 yards in the first half.
He is ranked 3rd overall in tight ends despite injuries. You make a good point.
So, I really do like that pick. But yeah, look at his flex with Chenault and looking at what he has on the bench. Like, there's just too many holes, I feel like, for even a manager like Jackson to be able to patch up with Mighty Flex or whatever.
To me, the running back holes are too gaping. You really rely on Chris Carson, and the guy goes down to a dirty tackle. You don't have shit. You're really struggling just to start anything.
Yeah, and you have Frank Gore as your third option.
It's like Lev Bell was garbage when he started. Like, I guess Frank Gore with Adam Gase and all these 3 wide receiver sets will be great too. Like, no, Frank Gore is going to be terrible as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I honestly, I don't know what he can do at this point to fix his team, because other than free agents and waiver wires,
well, he could shop Lamar Jackson in theory.
Yeah, he could, but that's what I'm going to say. If he's going to make a trade, he doesn't really have much to offer, and if he does trade one of those major pieces, it's going to be leaving him with a hole at other positions. Because I don't trust Matt Ryan to back up Lamar Jackson, even though it's not that big of a disparagement in points. But I don't know. If he was to trade one of his wide receivers, I would just see there'd be another hole. So
to me, you're still high on Calvin Ridley if you're Jackson. He's the #1 receiver in the league. Julio Jones has been banged up and still gets the safety help. Calvin Ridley is a guy who is not going to finish the year 1 in receiver rank. I don't even think I think he'll finish like 11 or 12. But if you're a fucking fantasy owner, you've got to really try to sell high on this guy. People think that the hurt Julio Jones is actually a permanent representation of this guy's skill.
You and Spencer clowned on me whenever we did the draft TWIF. Whenever I asked if Calvin Ridley was #1 or #2 on the depth chart, and y'all were...
Well, it is a clown question. The only reason he's getting touches is because Julio's getting double covered injured, and he's fucking single covered over the top. It's like he's dead. No. Julio is definitely receiver #1. No. It's a huge. First of all, it's a huge difference. Julio Jones is de facto receiver #1. He's way more talented, he's way more experienced, he's way higher paid. Now, can Calvin Ridley get the higher numbers because he doesn't get safety help? Sure. And same with the other guy. Could Boyd get better receiving numbers than Green because Green has never been the same since the toe injury? Sure. But Jackson drafted Ridley, and I gave him credit because I said, even during that draft video, Ridley is good because Julio Jones gets safety help. And that's the real reason in which Calvin Ridley has been effective this year. And it's been a little bit to do with Julio's injuries. Even if Julio's injured, people still will respect him. That guy's such a lethal weapon, but I don't look at what I said with Calvin like it was wrong, though. I think what I said about Calvin was still right.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I wasn't wrong either, though, because he's literally been the best wide receiver in the league.
Well, if you said that, you'd certainly be right, because he's ranked #1.
Because in draft boards, who was ahead of who? AJ Green or Boyd? Of course it was AJ Green. But who's produced more? Boyd.
Well, I don't know about that. Did people really take AJ Green over Boyd coming off of that toe injury?
Yes, I think so. Name alone.
I'm aware of the name value. I'm a guy who has loved AJ Green. I'm honestly one of his biggest fans and really like him as a player, but I'll be straight up with you, King of Funny. I think your average intelligent fantasy football owner was aware of the fact Tyler Boyd was better than AJ Green. I think if you took your just cut of the run, normal fantasy owner and put them in the 6th round and said AJ Green or the 5th round or whatever, or Tyler Boyd. AJ Green or Tyler Boyd, who's better? Who are you taking? AJ Green might have had the more name recognition, but Tyler Boyd was going to be the better player. And I knew that, and I'm a guy who loves AJ Green. AJ Green's one of my favorite players. So I just think it's important to note that, yes, AJ Green's downfall was rather obvious, but no one expected Tyler Boyd to be this good either. Even if he was expected to be solid, it wasn't this good.
Well, I'll give you my hot take of the day, because after watching, and I love Julio Jones too, but after watching both of them both play at Alabama in college, watching both of them play like their rookie, sophomore years, I think Calvin Ridley, talent-wise and production-wise, is better than Julio Jones.
Wow.
So.
What makes you say that? Route running ability or what?
Yeah, no, and because Julio is such a physical, fast guy, but man, the route running when it comes to Ridley, there's so much like separation on half the routes that he's on, even if he is got a second guy covering him. And I agree with your point. Julio Jones obviously has a safety double covering him half the time, but Calvin Ridley is one of the more pure wide receivers I've ever seen when it comes to just route running and his catch radius. And I think the upside for Ridley is even more than Julio Jones was when he first came into this league. So,
well, that's an incredibly tall statement, but to be fair, whenever I look at Calvin Ridley's ability to pressure safeties, I can't say that I disagree with you. This is a lethal guy, Benny boy. So I love the point that you made, and even though Jackson lost, we're going to have to move on. And that's going to be to the second matchup of that division. Actually, no, it's not. We've already covered it. As Breonna Taylor, AB, beat Spencer. AB's ID changes like a Facebook status.
Yeah, I don't know why. You're right. He does change his team name every 3 days.
He does change his name. But that's sort of what happens whenever you do the gimmick name. I remember Christian on the board a couple weeks ago whenever Wentz had 11 and quarter 4 goes, I'm going to have to change the Wentz name. It's shit. And then whenever Wentz had me at 20 points in overtime, Seagosh goes, Wentz ain't that bad. That's just part of having the gimmick name, though.
And because Wentz had to cover his ass to
show how in overtime. And he goes, and then Seagosh astidiously goes, oh, Wiley, it's not an overtime. Like, oh, I'm sorry.
It wasn't, though. It was all those points right at the end of the fourth.
I know, I was watching, but it's just sort of a funny quip. Like, oh, he got him right at the end. Like, you lucked out. Because for 3.5 quarters, we saw Wentz at 10 points. You know what I mean? It's
for
a
2.5 seasons, I've seen Wentz.
Oh, talk to him, Benny boy.
Yeah,
oh my goodness.
Don't act like this was the moment you realized your name was shit, Christian. Come on, like we all know Wentz is awful.
That's one thing that blew me about Christian's mind, Benny boy. It's like when you win some, you lose some. It's like,
no, you just lose some.
You're gonna name your quarterback identity off of an average guy? Like, I guess it's good for Seagow. It's like you go 500 and you go 500. It's like, yeah, Christian, you do. And when you go 8-6 and get lucky, you win a title. That's your MO, dude. Come on. Yeah, you win some, you lose some, you motherfucker.
He just changed his name to you lose some. That's the entire team.
It's like Christian, like, draft fucking Drew Brees or Lamar Jackson and go to the semifinal and lose again. We can't take it into the season of this shit. Come on, brother. But in this game, I think it was very interesting that both of the teams scored over 110 points. Lilly did very well, but Weston, the recent father, persevered and kept the season in the horizon at 1-2. Ben, I'd love you, even though Mitch Trubisky got hurt, just to sort of bring this home and talk about how Weston won, because this is one of the more wholesome Christian owners we have in the league. This is a really kind-hearted guy that deserves to get a few W's.
Oh, if not the most pure and nice person in our league. So yes, he deserves whatever he gets. Not even bringing up how good of a manager he is. But really good game for Weston. Like you said, Trubisky getting hurt puts you at a disadvantage, but wow, his team really did perform all around except for Duke, or who was it? D Johnson. Who is that? Deontay Johnson.
Classic.
Too many D Johnsons. But
seriously,
Davis, good week, or decent week yards wise, but he got that reception touchdown. Henry finally broke out of that little slump that he's been in, which I feel like is a part of Weston's failures these past few weeks, because that's the number 1 draft pick. Allen Robinson, I really like. Doesn't matter who's throwing it to him, apparently, because he still puts up good numbers. Kelsey hasn't blown up this year, but he's 8.7. That's all you can ask for from a tight end. And it kind of sucks that Edelman had a bad game, but because when you look at that name on paper as your flex, you would think that you would win that matchup most times. But Gostkowski scoring the most points, tied
hilarious.
For the most points with Derrick Henry. 25 points. After who would have thought after that? Who would have thought? After
man. Oh, it's so funny.
After that first week where Gostkowski missed, Lord knows how many extra points and field goals. Who would have thought he would still be on an NFL team, let alone a fantasy team?
It looks like he's still a Patriot this week, dude. It's so great. He's solo carried, for Christ's sake.
Thank God that Ryan Tannehill can't perform in the red zone. My God,
Tannehill got him to kicking distance, and that's about it. Talk about a peak Tyson's performance. They can't do shit and still win. It's great, dude.
If you cut that performance in half, if he would have got 12 and a half, that's the game.
Good.
That's the game.
That's still good.
Lily really got fucked. I know last week I was really upset about the way I lost to Cameron, but if I lost
115 to 140, the motherfucker's out here with this kicker getting 25. Oh, I love it, Vinny boy. I love it.
Honestly, that is if football already wasn't parody, that's parody enough.
I love it. Steven goes, it's not even Ryan's suck up. Or fucking Stephen Bullock, the Aggie, you know? It's a former Patriot just kicking him to victory as Minnesota shits the bed. It's so funny.
Yards.
The guy had 25 points! That's insane for a kicker. Weston's quarterback got fucking hurt / pulled mid-game for Nick Foles and still got him 11 and he won! I mean, if you look at a fantasy game, you're fucking... Oh, I know Weston just despises swear words and couldn't even make it through this, but...
Hecky darn.
Your freaking kicker carries you because your quarterback got hurt! Oh my goodness, it's so funny! Oh, you've gone to church all those years and it finally paid off! Steven Gostkowski with 25, I love it!
If I was Lily, I would have to get baptized after this kind of game because
just brutal game for Lily, brutal.
And I've been thinking this for the past 2 weeks, looking at her team and stuff, and after the draft, I'm really impressed with Lily's management and her team. I mean, Russell Wilson is grade A, one of the best quarterbacks. Adrian Peterson is not a bad option. I mean, I know he's not the AD of old or AP of old, but he's still putting up points. Not a big fan of Gurley, but I do love Stiggs and Anderson. And I love Galladay. Galladay is one of my favorite wide receivers in the league. And then she had Jefferson on her bench that went off. And I really do think that Lily deserves some credit because as the only female owner in the league and being the youngest in the league, she's really grown into her own. And all I can hope is I hope that she's the one doing it because I'm really impressed because despite this loss, I still think it's going to be a good season for her.
Agreed. I think she'll be a threat going forward. So what do you think about C. Gouch's and I game to conclude the week in review? Because this is a game that had a lot of playoff implications, but if you look at my team, a lot of the elements of my team really stood tall. If you look at Drew Brees being consistent, Zeke Elliott was shut down utterly, but because he had the talented defensive tackle Woods fullback for him, he was able to punch it in once. Kareem Hunt found the end zone. Keenan Allen and DeAndre Hopkins both found a plethora of targets. So I just love for you, an incredibly talented, knowledgeable fantasy owner, to really touch on this matchup between Christian and I, me of course the defending Super Bowl hero, and Christian being a very talented owner who, over the last few years especially, is becoming more dangerous and more talented. I want to hear your thoughts on this, Benny.
Really close game. One of the best rivalries that we have, or at least one of my favorites.
For sure. Division.
I looking at Christian's points from his players, it's kind of like a point sandwich. Like you got 21 points from Carson Wentz at the top, and then you got a bottom bun of the Colts defense scoring his most of the week, 26. And then in between those two buns, you just have a lot of mediocre single-digit performances. No one really standing out that much. I mean, Amari was his... In that sandwich, Amari was his top scorer with 8.6.
Didn't break 10, no touchdown, no big deal.
Yeah, just a very, very, lackluster, just
and there you
below
go,
average
OBJ with his dick out versus terrible defense, less than 6. Where
and
the
I saw that.
At OBJ?
OBJ, which I traded, and Joe Mixon. He started both of them this week. They combined got less points than David Johnson got me, which wasn't a lot. It was like 12.5, but that's still more than 11. So
it's brutal.
It was kind of. I was happy to see that neither of those guys popped off the week after I traded them. But looking at your side of things, Drew Brees, despite his age and how he's not throwing the ball downfield at all, still producing great fantasy numbers, consistent. Zeke, I'm not even worried about that. Even like on a day like that, when he gets stopped at the line, he's still got a touchdown. And we've talked about Kareem Hunt extensively. Love him. Keenan Allen has been really, really good. And DeAndre Hopkins has been better than I expected him to be in Cliff Kingsbury's offense, which I expected him to be really good, but he's been really involved. You're one below average performance. You're tight end with
just assume it's fucking Kittle and move on. You feel me?
Yes. Yeah. And exactly. You moved on from him. And then Ronald Jones, decent flex. I do think that you'll have to find another, or you might have to interchange like a lot of owners do with your flex.
I agree. I'm feeling not anything above decent with Ronald Jones, frankly.
But I mean, your team did enough. I mean, you only had. Yeah, your bottom 4 players not get double digits compared to him, who only had 2.
Defense. When you go against the Colts defense and you get to face Adam Gase, it's a fucking tough charge to overcome. Adam
you gotta
Gase
give him
is
credit,
just
though.
so clueless. Oh, I do. Obviously, it was a good decision to pick up the Colts. No, it was a good decision. I'm not undermining it in any way, but
and scoring 26, like that's an amazing. If we think about it, that's a really, really, really good pickup.
And it's even more humorous when you consider I picked up the defense that faced the Jets offense and got less than 10 the very next week, but.
If you cut that score total 26, I mean in half, or give them 10.
Yeah.
I mean the game's not even close then.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean so that alone kind of gave him a chance, but like we said, that point sandwich of all those players in between the top and the bottom, which just did nothing for him.
It's always annoying, or rather amusing, to sort of reflect upon how you felt whenever the game was scored a certain way. And whenever Carson Wentz had 10, like with 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, it was like, oh, well, Wentz is going to have 10 and the Colts ain't going to have shit. And the Colts end up with 20 plus and wins up with 20 plus, and it's like you almost lose. It's scary, even though it seems like you're going to win.
Yeah, but good victory for you. You got it done. Even the players that didn't go out there and kill it still got you decent totals. So
right,
I think consistency is really the biggest thing when it comes to fantasy. So
I agree with that, especially when you ever consider that you really have to just win the games that you put up the points to win. So
exactly.
I'm going to intro this one and actually go ahead and take a bathroom break as you preview it, because in terms of it being my matchup, it is a little pretentious if I, lead the intro. So we have me
Austin
versus Benny, or excuse me, me versus Austin, and Benny is going to just really dive deep into it. So I'm going to go AFK for about 90 seconds. Benny, you just hit your punches here, buddy. Go for it right now.
All right. Well, this is the Ben Rogers part of this segment where I talk and not Wiley. First off, I want to say put that mask up. 2, say her name. That is all. All right, let's get into it. One of the more interesting matchups of this week, honestly, with a new member in the league, especially like Austin, knowing his personality, it's interesting seeing him play all these long-time members of our league. But this week, I don't know, it's kind of a toss-up for me. I think Wiley might have the edge. But then again, whenever you have an undrafted running back that's scoring you 20 points a week, it's hard to write off Austin. But let's just break it down position by position. You got Drew Brees versus Kyler Murray. I'll give the edge to Kyler on that one, playing Carolina. Even though Detroit does have a spongy defense, but I still think Kyler, with his running ability, will get more points. Zeke Robinson, honestly, that's a throw-up to me because they're both playing the two worst teams in Ohio, which is the two teams in Ohio, Cincinnati and Cleveland. So I can see both those guys having big outputs, but I can also see Zeke popping the fuck off. Excuse me, Weston. The heck off. Kareem Hunt, questionable, but I still think that he'll play against the Dallas defense. I don't think Kareem will have a good or biggest week this week against Dallas, and I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire will have a good week against New England, but that's to be seen. Wide receivers, though, which is one of Austin's biggest strengths. Keenan Allen, which I just said that I really like, against Sammy Watkins right now, which I like Sammy Watkins as a player. He's super talented. He's just so far down on that depth chart. They have so many options.
Boomer bust.
Oh, yeah, he's the definition of it. But then you look at DeAndre versus Tyreek. That's a great matchup. I give the edge to Hopkins on that one just because he's playing Carolina and because the lack of weapons compared to what the Chiefs had. Not saying that that the Cardinals don't have a lot of weapons, but I just feel like the Chiefs just utilize all of theirs so well. Tight ends wise, I do like the pickup Austin made of Austin Hooper. I think that's a solid option, even if it is on a Baker Mayfield-led offense. But he gets a decent amount of red zone looks. So for what Austin traded to get Malcolm Brown, that's a decent replacement. Replacing Zach Ertz, it's decent. But yep. George Kittle obviously gets the upper hand for me on this one. He's one of the best tight ends. Nothing needs to be said about how good Kittle is. No, Kittle's not hurt. He's healthy.
He was hurt in the past, but now he's healthy.
Yeah, now he's healthy. And then we got Jones in your flex, which
gotten a lot of carries for Fournette ain't no shit.
Yeah, so I mean, for a flex option, that's a solid option. I really like it. I like it more than Brandon Cooks, a guy who has talent but has been dealt around the league so many times. It seems like he can never find a home to stay with or a team to stay with. And on a team like that we've talked about with Bill O'Brien loving his Penn State, Jerry Sandusky, run the ball down your anus type of gameplay.
Oh God!
Like the showers are warm and ready in Houston. The only thing harder than Houston humidity are those showers.
Oh, 0-3.
0-3. But the only guy I trust on that offense is other than David Johnson is
TB12.
Will Fuller.
Oh yeah.
That's the only option wide receiver wise or tight end wise that I even consider a decent option. So
I was thinking Mike Evans. That's why I misspoke.
Yeah. But yeah, I give you the edge on Jones. Kickers, Tucker's the best in the game when it comes to actually clutch. But Lutz is on a team that gets a lot of offensive opportunities as well. So yeah. I'll give that a neutral. It's a kicker. And then your Broncos defense already got you 6 last night with 6 sacks, which is kind of impressive if you think about it.
But nothing else. You know, you look at the Jets' fucking offense. You think about Adam Gase. You think
like,
about
what?
Sam Darnold. Maybe 6 sacks ain't too much. You know, maybe you were expecting more than 6 sacks.
Yeah, after what the Colts just did last week, I guess the 25 points last week to the Jets,
Exactly.
I can see how you'd be expecting a little bit more. But Saints defense versus the Lions. Once again, kind of like the Kickers, I think it's a neutral thing. I don't think the Saints defense is going to go crazy or get blown out, but I see a decent production. But honestly, looking at this matchup, I got to give you the advantage based off of I feel like there's more consistency with your running backs and his wide receiver with having both Kansas City wide receivers playing, and that can work sometimes, as we know. I could be wrong, but if anything, Tyreek's going to get the points, and Sammy's going to be a dud sitting there. So that alone, also mixed with y'all's flexes, I like Jones more than Cooks. I give the edge to you.
Well, it's two boomer bust guys. It's really hard to judge that one will boom and the other one will also boom. It's usually either or. It's not a case of both. So your analysis makes perfect sense.
I mean, Tyreek's pretty consistent. He's got 10, 16, and 16 so far. So, I feel like he's...
Overall, Tyreek's more of a booming bust. He's not like Sammy Watkins boomer bust where it's like 0 or 30, but even as a top receiver, he's either like 20-plus points or less than 7 usually. So,
but like when Tyreek booms, he booms.
For sure, yeah. So, he's one of the fastest players in the entire league.
Compared to when Watkins booms, and like that's like a 16-point outburst, which
True.
is like,
Watkins' floor is a little higher, but his ceiling's a little lower. Don't you agree?
Completely, yeah.
All right, well, perfect. Now we can review Matt Stafford and friends versus Jack's Capital. And when I look at this team overall, I see Miami willing to just be eviscerated by Russell Wilson. And I look at Lily's team, and a lot of soft matchups jump out at me. I see that the Arizona kicker is facing soft Carolina without the running back. I see Will Fuller's questionable going to Minnesota. You know, Mark Andrews has been underwhelming, even though he's facing Washington. To me, this matchup just screams a Jackson advantage.
Maybe at first, but then I look at his team right now, and there's 3 guys that are questionable with Calvin, Carson, and Fant. And Fant and Gore already played last night for him, only giving him 7 points. So he's already at a disadvantage behind the 8 ball here.
Yep.
And I mean, you're right. I mean, the points made about some of those soft starts on Lily's roster for this week, but I give her the edge over Jackson.
Well, if we had done this 24 hours ago, maybe Jackson gets the clear edge, but now that Jackson's been locked into 2 subpar starts, maybe it's Lily straight up. And you look at guys like Mark Andrews and Galladay who are dealing with injuries for their people who they're competing with, and maybe you do in fact edge Lily, but I feel like Lamar Jackson's going to have a monster week versus Washington, man. I'm being straight up with you.
See, once again, this could be a hot take, but I don't think Lamar will be. I don't think he'll be bad against Washington, but I don't think that it's going to be like a blowout, you know, like Big 12 kind of game where it's like 50-40 or anything like that. I think it's still going to be a relatively low-scoring game between these 2 teams.
Well, I totally mess with that, and if you think that's what it's going to be, I do not discourage you to say it in any way. If you think it's going to be low scoring,
I have no reason to think that, honestly, other than a gut feeling. But analytically, it would look like Lamar is going to have a big week. But compared to Russell against the Dolphins, I feel like Russell's way more of a lock.
Russell is the guy who's just so mistake adverse. This is a guy who, even in high risk DK Metcalf offenses, is a guy who doesn't throw many picks. You've got to love Russell Wilson if you're a West Coast fan, man.
Well, not even if I'm a West Coast fan, because I didn't like Russell Wilson when he first came out. But I've told Austin this for like the past couple months that Russell Wilson, maybe not now, but because how well known he is, but Russell Wilson still might be the most underrated quarterback in the league. I have a fun tidbit for you. Baker Mayfield, Odell Beckham, Dak Prescott. Those 3 guys, I can name off a huge list of them. Guys who have MVP votes. Like, they got to vote for MVP. Russell Wilson in his career has never once got one MVP vote.
Not even one?
Not one.
That's just so troubling, because you would think he would at least have gotten the token vote for some of those high rush yard, high efficiency seasons. That's just crazy, man.
Goff, Wentz, those guys have. Yeah,
Goff!
2 years ago, whenever Goff had his decent year.
That's crazy, Ben.
And Russell Wilson, with all that he's done, literally, he has put that team on his back. And if it wasn't for how strong he was, he'd have scoliosis by now, because that motherfucker has taken them everywhere and back. And he's done it all by himself with a really good defense, too, for most part. But he's had no weapons for most of his career. And for what he's performed and not have a single MVP vote, and then mediocre players like Wentz and Foles that have had some, like, who have gotten votes, it just absolutely blows my mind. I can't believe that. So I just wanted to get that off my chest, because I think Russell Wilson is a top 3 quarterback, if not the top 2. And I think he's been heavily, heavily underrated. Even if we know he's good, I think even then we don't think he's good enough. I don't think we give this guy enough credit.
Well, I think Russell Wilson within the past 2 to 3 years has gotten a lot of credit that he has definitely deserved.
More than his first few years, for sure.
Because overall, in his first few years, he was dismissed as a Michael Vick type running quarterback, when in reality, this was a guy who was pretty damn accurate. Imagine Tony Romo without the choke gene, with a little more accuracy, and a little more long-range accuracy even. That's Russell Wilson.
I'm pretty sure he leads the league, like, over these past few seasons in completion.
Long-range completion percentage?
Yeah, I mean,
he does.
And, like, that's the thing, is, like, they always rush the ball 30 times, and, like, you look at his numbers, and it's like, oh, he was 18 for 20. Like, but then he had like 300 yards and 3 touchdowns and a rushing touchdown, because he's so damn efficient. He does not make mistakes when he makes a pass.
Not only do they get the ball down, but they also are able to hand it off when necessary. And it means that they're one of these teams that is highly legitimate, one of these teams that is very scary. And losing a Super Bowl on a foolish call doesn't negate their talent. That needs to be noted very significantly.
When I think of the Seahawks' offense, in a lot of ways it reminds me of, like, playing in Mighty Might or like Pee Wee football, or even junior high, where it's like you don't have a passing game usually, but it's like, well, if I can run the ball 4 downs in a row for 3 yards, that's a first down.
Yep.
And like this, and Pete Carroll's is really smart with it too. He doesn't mess up when it comes to managing drives, because there's so many teams that'll be 2nd and 2, 3rd and 2, and they go for a Hail Mary, a play action deep pass, and then it's 4th down. Seahawks don't do that shit. Seahawks make sure that they give that to Chris Carson or Hyde, or make sure Russell Wilson has a little outlet pass or a little run on a bootleg. I mean, they make
Benny
sure.
Boy, that's fine in the current day, but if you're going to define their tenure, how are you going to define the fact that whenever they had beast mode, they passed the ball? You feel me? Like,
beast mode was overrated at that time.
So you're going to say that it was a completely fine decision to throw a screen pass to the receiver?
Oh, no. That decision obviously was terrible, and you should have ran the ball. I'm not going to ever defend that.
Even if beast mode was overrated, you should have ran with beast mode there, right? Like, you have to judge it equally.
But that was like 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago.
But that's fine. I just want to hear your take on the matter. Like, do you think they should have ran? Do you think the pass was fine? Like, I just want to hear your take.
Oh, I think they should have passed. I mean, I honestly think. Well, yeah. It's like whenever I play Madden, it's like, yeah, I should probably just run the ball up the middle and get a touchdown, but fuck that. I want to throw a pass and get a touchdown. I don't want to be stuffed at the goal line 3 times in a row. So I don't blame them for making that decision, and if it worked, guess what? We wouldn't even be talking about this because we wouldn't remember it. If that play would have worked and they would have won the game, we wouldn't know about this.
Oh yeah, Pete Carroll would be just dismissed as this incredibly talented, off the wall, left wing, fresh coast, just brilliant guy who didn't have any idea how to fuck up a play. You know what I mean? Like, if that shit had worked, but it didn't. So instead, fucking Pete Carroll's seen as a pariah.
Yeah, well, and see, like that mistake was bad, and I feel like he's learned from it, because that's why I said what I said a couple minutes ago about how they don't pass it on stupid situations, and they get that first down. And even if they do pass it on third down situations, it's short passes. They're not going for the deep ball. They're so efficient, and they control the clock so well. And I just think that if you compare Pete Carroll to a coach like Dan Quinn, who I don't even have to talk about this season's mistakes for the Falcons and Dan Quinn.
Yep.
I could just refer back to the Super Bowl.
23.23, or excuse me, 3 against 28.
27, yeah, 27-3 or 28-3. Yeah. But yeah, my point is that the Falcons, Pete Carroll and the Falcons both made really bad decisions that cost them and that we remember. The difference is Pete Carroll has become a much better head coach. I always liked him as a strategical head coach, even when he was in the Pac-10 with USC. I think that one decision was an outlier, because he has turned it around. He makes good decisions. And then I say Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn, what does he do after that Super Bowl collapse?
He's a choker.
Oh, he allows the Cowboys to literally have the most unbelievable comeback I've ever witnessed.
Just a
I have never actually
disgusting comeback where, even if you're not a Cowboy fan, you're saying to yourself, how did they come back? Are you kidding me? Even as a casual Cowboy fan, I was saying that to myself. How did they come back? It was such an absurd game. You're right on the money here, Ben.
Watching that onside kick was like watching, I felt like it was like slow motion, and then I felt like I was watching a car crash. Like, you couldn't just take your eyes from it, because you're just like, why is no one picking it up? Why is it still rolling? Oh my God, the Cowboys have the ball. And like, then you realize, like, this isn't just a fucking Falcons thing. This is a Dan Quinn thing. Like, this is
that's a great way to put it, honestly, dude.
And if I want to go back to even more recent, because that was 2 weeks ago, last week, I remember, because me and Austin always watch NFL Red Zone, God's gift to mankind, and the analyst guy, Scott Hansen, said, well, I know that you Falcons fans are going to hate me for saying this, but they're up by 15 and there's 3.5 minutes left.
Like it's the apartment curse, dude. Like, X amount is left. You don't hate me for saying this, but this is the obvious time limit. Like, dude, it's not your fault. Calm down.
And we know the end of that story. They obviously blow that 15-point lead and lose the game. So back-to-back weeks where this guy's kept his job. And so anytime someone gives criticism of Pete Carroll's decision, I just say, you know what? It was a bad decision. I don't blame him for it, because, like I said, if it went right, we wouldn't even talk about it.
Yep.
But if anything, he learned from it, and he's made sure that offense and that team is in control of his hands all the time. Like, 90% of games the Seahawks play, even that one last week against the Cowboys, the Seahawks usually control the time of possession, and he makes the right decisions to do so. So I'm sorry to berate that point so much. It's just it grinds my gears when coaches like him and Adam Gase, or Dan Quinn and Adam Gase, still have their jobs, but then
they have Adam Gase and those guys have such an air of condescension, and I know better, and I'm better than you guys, and I'm more intelligent than you guys. It's very vexing to a football veteran, man. It's just very frustrating to a person who knows the truth.
I'm not an Adam Gase defender by any means, but if you want to look at it just from a very superficial point of view, the two teams he has head coached for have been the New York Jets and the Miami Dolphins. Who, other than when the Dolphins... Are we going to hear a Gase defense here, Benny boy? I didn't think this was possible. I'm just saying, is it 1976? I mean, is Dan Marino back on the Dolphins?
No, but I mean, it's Adam Gase.
When's the last time...
I'm just saying, Giants fans hating this guy. He's like the scum of the earth to a lot of these guys.
I'm not saying that he's a good coach.
That's fine, but like, it's just, the narrative.
I'm just saying, name me the coaches who have succeeded there in the past 20 years at both those locations.
Nowhere.
Exactly, and so it's obviously not just a coach problem too. See, with the Falcons The Falcons, it's just a coach problem. It's just Dan Quinn.
Right.
It's not an organizational thing.
You still got Julio. You still got Matty Ice. You still got a serviceable running back. You got guys that can do it there.
But with the Dolphins and Jets, and especially the Jets, and it seems to be this way.
The Giants too, for Christ's sake.
It seems to be this way with a lot of New York teams.
Oh!
Well, the Giants, if you want to talk about football, if you want to talk about basketball, the Knicks are the laughingstock of the league for the past 25 years.
Oh, yes. I love it.
The Nets, the Nets have never been good, even though they did get KD.
They had fucking Pedro Stojakovic for 2 years and they fucking fell off. Yeah, you're so right. Jason Kidd couldn't carry that team to shit. You're honestly dead right about anything, King of Funny.
If it wasn't for Steinbrenner and Cashman, literally New York would have no rings in that city. So, as much as I hate the Yankees, I gotta give them that. But
something that'll rattle Jackson beyond his fucking existential person.
But main point is that New York and Miami have been a really, really hard place to win in for so long. So I'm not gonna put it all on Gase for that. I'm not gonna say he's helped at all, because obviously good coaching will overcome a bad organization. But yeah, I just think that Pete Carroll is too criticized for that one outlier of a decision, because it sticks in our mind. It's easily memorable. Like Bill Buckner. No one remembers Billy Buckner
hitting 300 all those years. You're damn right, Ben. Everyone remembers Bill Buckner for that silly error he had in the 1986 playoffs versus the Mets, but no one ever remembers him for batting 300. So you're dead on with that example. Exactly right.
So, but I digress. We should probably move on to the next matchup.
Go for it.
Which one do you want to do next? Because our lineups are probably going to be a little bit different.
Well, I think we could go straight into One Johnny Football Please versus Bing Bong as far as the previews go, and not miss.
One question, because Austin has asked me this, and I realized I didn't know what it was. What the hell does Cameron's name mean?
Well, Bing Bong, as far as I know, is sort of like a.
Because I'm sure all the TWIF viewers want to know too.
Well, it's a great question, because Bing Bong's been this ID for so many years, but Bing Bong to me is like an unstable chemical reaction. That's what it means to me. So I don't know if you can take another meaning from it or ask him and derive a different meaning from it. But when I
just know that he's a nerd, and I see Ragnarok, and I'm like, is this guy talking about Thor?
When I hear Bing Bong, I think like whenever you have a basic trait structure settled for a character, but then you meet them and come to another one, but then it's Marvel, so it's like you have to roll your eyes and shit. Like, I just really don't know, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I always think of Billabong, the worst clothing ever, but
Billabong.
I don't know why.
God. That's amazing.
Billabong was
Billabong.
Between that and Echo. Between that and Echo, some of the worst shit.
Oh my god! And Lee Harvey and motherfucking Ed Hardy too. Oh, I love it.
Someone who doesn't wear that kind of clothing is Ryan Fitzpatrick, who Weston is starting this week though.
Oh my god, I love it.
And I saw this last week because if you look at the results of the past week in the Game Center, it gives you like it gives you little facts about like Weston was the only guy to win without a top 15 quarterback starting for him.
Oh my god!
Which
Dear
is
Lord, we're really in for it.
Is so right on to what we were talking about in the draft video about, like, we were kind of iffy about his quarterback position, but we're sure that he could put quarterbacks in and make it work, because he did last week. And two, it also just shows you that that Ryan Fitzpatrick is just god tier. One of the best quarterbacks this league has ever seen.
Well, he's the guy that has a lot of upside, certainly.
And I say that obviously tongue in cheek, but I do love Fitzmagic. It is a bit of tongue in cheek,
but the motherfucker won a Super Bowl for me with 35 points last year. He's not talentless. He's just
the only Ivy League quarterback in history, Harvard grad. He's got the beard. He literally trashed Minshew last week for his little mustache. He literally said in a pregame interview, "Well, mustaches are for usually guys that grow patchy beards." So,
and here I am waiting for Kyle Hendricks to start game 2 versus the Cubs.
Sitting there with his big dick and his Harvard diploma with his giant beard,
No. With Kyle Hendricks, it's even better than Harvard, homie. It's Dartmouth, our school. You and I with the green Dartmouth fucking t-shirts. Kyle Hendricks. You and I got to ride.
Green.
You and I have got to ride with Kyle Hendricks, Spinny boy, because it's a trick play. This guy was a Rangers prospect, for Christ's sake. If Kyle Hendricks doesn't succeed, who does? Oh my goodness. Who else do we have to cover and TWIF this week, Minnie boy?
Right, but going to the matchup, I'm just going to give a quick little review of it because Cameron doesn't watch this, and well, Weston does. So I'll give Weston's point of view. If I'm Weston looking at this,
he's gonna pinch A. Brown again and go for 23. Oh, Cameron!
I'm gonna give you my third hot take of the day. Cameron's gonna do the same thing that he did against me, starting the same player, not playing, and he's gonna win again. That's my prediction.
Wow, whammy.
And obviously, I'm saying this after Melvin Gordon's performance. Which I like Melvin Gordon. Again, they talked about him a lot here on the Denver Sports Radio. I like Philip Lindsay too. Obviously, he's on my team. But Melvin Gordon, I feel like fits well with this team, and he finally had a good game last night against a putrid Jets defense, and had that great run that was led by a great offensive block by the quarterback. So I looking at that already, and even despite the fact that Cameron 99.9%, like I would bet my life that Cameron's not changing that position. Actually, like I would bet my mother's life that Cameron ain't changing shit.
Fair enough.
Most static lineup in the league.
Look,
once it's drafted, it's set in stone.
Look,
I'm not. Ten Commandments.
I'm not gonna swing back on you on that because that's a pretty high percentage fucking prediction. But
I still think he wins.
No, it's fair enough with me. But is there fucking anyone we haven't gone over yet? Because I'm too fucking nasty blasted to tell you in all honesty. So I think we're fucking ready to move on. No.
I want to give Weston his due diligence. So just let me.
Weston versus Cam?
Just tell me quickly. Yeah, that's who we're over right now. And I just want to quickly just go over Weston. Like I said, because Cameron doesn't watch this.
Yeah.
But if Weston watched this, I want to give him some perspective because I like the Fitzpatrick. I mean, for what he has and what he has to work with, I like the Fitzpatrick start, even if it is against Seattle. But I think that he's up against a lot because Cameron has Kamara, who can literally go off for 30 or 40, which he has these past 2 weeks. Me and Aaron know that both well.
Yep.
Kamara, I pointed out to Austin, Kamara has won the game for Cameron these past 2 weeks on his primetime performances on Sunday night and Monday night. So that alone with Dak, Marvin Jones, who I love, Higbee, who's decent. And I'm not saying that anything Weston has is bad, but when Edelman is your number 2 or number 1 wide receiver right now, or technically I guess he'd be number 2, and he's questionable and he's not performing like he would if he had Brady.
Yep.
That and Julio Jones being questionable is just a lot of question marks for me on Weston's lineup. So I with that being said, I'm giving the edge to Cameron, and it might be another nasty one, even if he doesn't start a wide receiver.
Couldn't agree with you more. So, who now are you going to review? You win some,
Next.
You lose some versus Snow Fraud?
Yeah, let's go the last 2. All right, I'll go ahead and run this one down.
Go
For it. You win some, you lose some. Terrible name, decent team, for once. And he has, and he's playing No Fried, my division opponent.
Yep.
So good matchup, 2-1 versus 2-1. But I'm gonna give the edge to, and I'm gonna go by position real quick. I'm giving the edge to Patty Mahomes. Obviously, I hate Wentz. Fuck Wentz, and I love Patty. That's all the analysis you need. If you don't think Patty Mahomes is literally a undefying generational player, then you are blind by now. Me and Austin have been saying that since Texas Tech.
Since fucking 2014.
You have to take that with a grain of salt because it's Big 12 defenses. So it's like,
I love it.
I mean, Graham Harrell was ripping it up for us. So I mean, calm down.
I love it, dude.
He really is I mean, we saw that his skill set's unbelievable. Kenyon Drake versus Austin Eckler. I don't know. That's kind of neutral for me. I like both players, but I can see Drake having a good week. Jacobs versus Gaskin. I'm obviously giving the edge to Jacobs. He's one of the most used running backs without any competition, and he's really good. I've liked him since last year. Odell Beckham against Thielen. Given at Thielen is the best option on that team since Stephon Diggs left. Say her name in Minnesota, and Adam Thielen is probably going to pop off against Houston. So I'll give that to No Fried. Amari Cooper playing Jake Paul's favorite team, the Browns, against DK Metcalf, which this is a tough one because DK Metcalf is one of the most underrated wide receivers. Yeah, he's really good. Him and Lockett together are really good for Russell Wilson. But I also like Cooper a lot too, and it's against the Cleveland defense that is not terrible, but
bet against the fucking Cowboys secondary though. Let me tell you, those guys are clowns.
Yeah, they are. They don't wear face paint. They just wear clown makeup.
Straight up clown makeup. Fucking Tyler Lockett, 10 yards.
Benny Hill music playing in the background.
It's just like, where's the safety? Christ! If you're a Cowboys fan, it's like, where's the safety? What the fuck is going on? It's a
the safety might as well just be a sand trap. Dude,
that's how it's been for 8 years with Cowboys fans. The fucking secondary is so awful. I fucking dropped the Jared Sensible reference on my homie this week, and he was like, "That was 8 years ago, Venomous. What's wrong with you? The Cowboys defense has been bad for years, Benny boy. Oh, it's been bad. It's been depressingly bad."
It has. Looking at the tight ends, I'll give the edge to Graham just by a tiny bit, just because Waller's kind of boom or bust. And Big Dick Nick is going to be slinging his dick around and the ball all day, so can't wait for that.
Yep.
Cooper Kupp, I give the edge to over Mixon. Jacksonville does have a decent run defense, so and we've also outlied.
Mixon's ceiling is so low, like it's really hard for him to hit that 8.
It's hard for me to say that. The one thing that made it hard for me to get rid of him is his usage. Like Spencer said in our draft video, he had over 300 touches last year, which was the most in the league.
And that's fine, but his ceiling was still low despite the usage rating. This is a guy who is a ground and pound guy above all else, in my opinion.
But he's gonna get. I thought he was gonna get decent amount of yards, or good amount of yards, decent amount of touchdowns, and I thought they were gonna use him. I mean, just as much as last year having a rookie quarterback, but obviously Joe Burrows is leading the league in completion attempts right now, so they're throwing it around. So I love Cooper Kupp. I had him his rookie year. I've liked him since his college days. Good white slot receiver. I love those kind of guys coming from Texas Tech.
Yep. Amendola types.
Kickers, I don't give a fuck. Matt Prater and Suck Up, they can fuck off. Colts and Cardinals on defense, though. Colts playing Big Dick Nick. I see them getting roasted. And the Cardinals playing Carolina Panthers, which I see doing. I give the edge to the Cardinals D on this one.
Really? With no McCaffrey even? Carolina offense is pretty bad.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I'm giving the edge to the Cardinals defense.
All right, fair enough. You can go with your opinion.
Because the Cardinals defense is. They're playing a team. Even though they may not turn the ball over a lot with Teddy Bridgewater, because it's a pretty low risk offense right now.
Yep.
But even that being said, if there's no turnovers, I don't see there being many points or yards scored, and I see the Cardinals kind of running away with this one, to be fair. So overall, I'm giving the edge to No Fried. I think No Fried just wins a lot of crucial matchups. I think it'll be close, but I do think No Fried, unfortunately, will beat Christian.
Well, I don't find your prediction of No Fried to be outlandish or absurd. I feel like that's definitely one of those intros that is right on the line, one of those sort of borderline calls. And if you consider the fact that we don't really have to deal with divisional play in Week 4, it opens a entire Pandora's box for us as owners.
Oh, this is when it gets fun.
Yeah, because it's me facing Austin. the new owner that everyone likes. It's Lily facing Jackson, the new plucky girl versus the newish guy that people think highly of.
Yeah, there's 3 games that you have to look at that matter to your division compared to just one other whenever you're in division.
It's Cameron versus Weston, a player you would consider incompetent versus a player you would consider exceptional. I mean, these are some really stellar matchups, man. You can't just fucking dismiss them. We got fucking No Fried and Sea Gouch. That's a solid matchup between 2 guys who have lost the Super Bowl recently.
Yeah, but I'm gonna give this Battle of Champions to No Fried slightly. So should we go ahead and move on to our last one between Spencer and Aaron?
Absolutely. Let's move on to our final matchup. That's a great idea, Benny boy.
Well, Spencer last week couldn't eat the W like Jameis Winston used to. Before he's eating W's on the Saints bench now as a 3rd string. But I just realized I missed watching Jameis play. I'm sorry.
Waiting for that Taysom Hill game, I'm sure.
He's a human highlight, man. Like 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions.
He's a human 25-yard fucking run reel. Fuck a highlight reel. I hope Taysom Hill plays in 3 games the rest of the season as a Drew Brees owner.
Taysom Hill is my BYU Mormon king. I love him, so.
You're not even Mormon. You're Church of Christ.
Hey.
What's going on with that, Benny boy?
Weston, cover your ears, but Mormons get the hottest girls.
Oh! Oh, they!
I'm looking at you, Alyssa Greenwood. And your nasty-ass boyfriend. Or husband. Alright, moving on. Cam Newton versus the mustache, patchy beard himself, Minshew. Oh man, this is kind of. I think I'll give the edge to Minshew, just because he is playing Cincinnati, and I think Minshew's performance last week is going to kind of spur him on to be even more proactive and be productive this week. I can see Cam having a good week against Casey's defense, maybe even getting a rush touchdown or 2, but I'm still going to give Minshew a little slight edge. But pretty equal in quarterbacks.
I don't know that I would hate Minshew as an edge there. I think that I'll actually favor Minshew as an edge in that situation, so that's totally fine from my perspective. I think Minshew will have a better week than he did last week. Shit in the bed and turning it over.
And then we get back into what I mentioned earlier is I think is the scariest running back combination in the league.
Which is?
Spencer might say something about that, but Dalvin Cook and Aaron Jones for Aaron, which, I mean, let me just look real quick.
Well, who is he facing?
Dalvin Jones is ranked 4.
Yep.
And Aaron Jones is playing the Falcons, which is ranked, and he's ranked 2. So he has the number 2 and 4. So I didn't even look at that until now, but I just thought off of the performances I've seen in my division already that these 2 are scary for Aaron.
Well, he has a heavy rushing attack for sure, but who does he have to face?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, despite his deficiencies at other positions. But Jameis, or excuse me, I'm not going to call him Jameis. Spencer.
That's hilarious.
The king
oh my
of cheese.
God. That's low-key funny, dude. Having a fucking Spencer called oh my God.
Yes, Miles. I don't know if we can get through this.
Oh my God! Oh, king of funny, don't end it early. I'm
just
sorry. Go ahead.
Just trying to live up to my name. But I like Miles Sanders and Jay Taylor, but I'm still giving the edge to Aaron's running backs on this. I'm just going to go 2v2 on these running back comparisons. I'm giving the edge to the running backs. If I look at the wide receivers for both teams, both of Spencer's wide receivers are questionable, Devontae and Michael Thomas. I think Thomas is expected back, though. I'm not sure about Adams. But
they'll get one of them, though, right? One of them will for sure. And that'll be an asset.
If Aaron has the scariest running backs, in my opinion, I think Spencer has the scariest wide receiver combo, maybe other than Austin, because those 2 together are pretty good. But I'm going to give the edge to the wide receivers to Spencer, because Devontae Parker, and as much as I like Berrios, he got 0 points last night.
And that ain't the fucking Twins starter.
Not Jose Barrios. This is our white king. Say his name. His name is Braxton. Okay, maybe not.
WhiteKing.jpg.
All right, never mind. This guy he needs to go to the professional lacrosse league.
And it ain't Roger Clemens in your fucking King of Funny highlight reel.
You're not my Riley Cooper, Braxton.
Hey, be real. Like, your Riley Cooper ain't any of the white guys that started for you, because you're a fucking Colorado fan. But that's great. Let's fucking hear it for your boys, Benny boy, before we go into football.
Right.
I'm watching like a montage of a guy running through a fucking woods right now, and I can't even like comprehend what he was thinking.
Tight ends, Jasecki and Schultz. I'm giving that to Jasecki, even though he's kind of been boober bust, because I don't really trust Schultz. Montgomery versus CeeDee Lamb. I like David Montgomery, especially now that Cohen's out for the year.
Yep.
So I feel like they're going to use him a lot more.
I love him too. Well, let's answer a more important question. Who gets more fantasy points, Michael Gallup or CeeDee Lamb? Because Spencer and Aaron have a bet over that.
I'll say Gallup. And I like CeeDee Lamb, don't get me wrong. It's just I think it's going to take him a little time to adjust into the league. And I feel like, especially when it comes to wide receivers, when they're rookies, it's better, or running backs too, but I think wide receivers especially, it's better to get those kind of guys that you like year two after a year of development, and like they were already in the league. Because it's a transition going from college to pro, no matter what level you play at.
I agree.
So I mean, even they talk about it with Jerry Jeudy here, and I love Jeudy. I mean, my boy, Star of David on his chest.
Oh.
And it got me a touchdown last night. But it's going to take them time to adjust. Same thing with the guy that the Vegas Raiders got. What's his name? Why am I blanking? Who's the wide receiver they got? The fastest. Oh yeah, Henry Ruggs.
Okay.
So yeah, all those guys. I mean, it's going to take time to develop, and that's why I think you should get them their second year and on. Because that's what happened with me and Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp had a decent rookie year, and then he blew up last year, which I thought he was, and I couldn't get him. So I'm going to give the edge to Montgomery here. I think his production with Cohen out is going to be really beneficial. Crosby, Zerlin, fuck them. They're kickers. They're not real people.
Fucking soccer players.
Yeah, just go back to Europe. Bills and Rams. Bills against the Raiders. The Raiders have been kind of hit and miss with their offense, but I still think that compared to a Rams matchup with the Giants, who have just been putrid every single game this year, compared to the Vegas, who has been average, I'm going to give the edge to the Rams on this one, as much as I do love the Bills' defense. So overall, though, this is a really kind of, I don't know, I think it's a pretty easy decision in my mind. I think Aaron is going to go 0-4 to continue his tanking ways. If only we had keepers or draft position based off of rank or record.
Well, Ben,
Aaron could literally.
Is he nervous? Is Aaron nervous? Is he a guy who isn't prepared to make fucking spots mid-season? Is this a guy that's soft, Aaron?
Between Aaron and the Jets, I don't know who's tanking for Trevor Moore. I honestly can't. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I wish that we had keepers or like a ranking of our draft based off of our records, because he could be on his way to going 0-4, and if that's the case, bye Aaron. I'm sorry. It's going to be between me and No Fried and Cameron's auto lineup that he set in stone whenever he drafted it. So yeah, edge Spencer here, and I think him and Jameis going to be eating some crab legs this weekend.
Well, if you want to look at it in terms of strictly Spencer's game versus Aaron, oh yeah, it's got to be Spencer, because even with the questionables, yeah, Cam's going to outdo Minshew versus a Cincinnati defense that you don't ever think of Cincinnati's defense being good, but Cincinnati just did well last week, and Minshew did poorly last week, and I think that if there was any chance for Minshew to not necessarily shit the bed, but not do very well, this was the week. You got Sanders, Thomas, and fucking Adams all in question, and Barrios is already locked in 0. This is some sort of repulsive matchup where You look at one guy who doesn't deserve to win because of injuries, and you look at one guy who doesn't deserve to win because of lack of talent and lack of management, and you just sort of fucking spit in a repulsed, disgusted state. You can't really judge this game in an even way. You can't judge this game in a way that gives it honor or talent or fucking back and forth. It's just repugnant, and I think that's a real takeaway from this fucking series.
As much as Dalvin Cook and Aaron Jones scares me, and those two can actually win him games based off of their performance alone.
Yep.
It's kind of like he's got like an kryptonite with Spencer. I mean, with having Adams and Thomas, because if those aren't the best two running combinations in the league, that might, other than Austin's combination, might be the best wide receiver combo in the league. So I feel like that will balance each other out, those two powerhouses of combos. And I feel like I keep almost saying it, I feel like Spencer's roster is more filled out. But that's if Adams and Thomas do play and Sanders play. So
right.
that could come into question. But once again, I think Spencer is going to win this one because not only is this a big game for Aaron and decides if he tanks for Trevor, this also decides if a lot for Spencer going 1-3, especially in that division, especially losing a game against a team that's 0-3 and Aaron. That would be huge and detrimental to Spencer's outlook on the rest of his season. So really big. I mean, this is an interesting matchup. You might see 0-3 and 1-2, but this game has a lot more meaning than you might think.
Well, the losing streak certainly has more focused sort of look into 0-2 as you might normally think. You know what I mean, Benny Boy, in terms of going out into a losing record and becoming a loser. Like, most of these people would just dismiss these things.
Yeah, and I honestly think Aaron's lack of talent at other positions on his team other than his running backs is really just going to handicap him for the rest of the year.
Well, I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I am in fact going to have to go get more water from my refrigerator, and I want you
we should probably wrap this up anyway. I mean, that was the last one.
Well, that's completely fair enough, but I'd like you to wrap up
okay.
the final sort of series in terms of what you think it will be, because a lot of people dismiss a lot of these previews as being biased or weirdly, even though neither of us are Italian, man, a lot of anti-Italian sort of anti-Guinea bias, anti-Guap sort of axe to grind, which obviously isn't true, but I'd love to hear your fucking end of thoughts on this matchup and any other fucking thing you want to say about this site, man. I'm going to take a fucking water walk. The next 3 minutes are yours. I mean, really go to town, Benny Boy. I trust and care about you. Go.
All right. Well, my name is Benjamin Rogers, the King of Funny. Welcome to my TED Talk. I really think that this season is going to come down to a couple of things. And they might sound repetitive and mundane to you, but obviously, waiver wire. We have seen a historical amount of injuries. I mean, compared to any other rest of season, the beginning of season, and we all know that's because the lack of preseason and actual time to get game ready. So that's why we see a little bit of these players and teams not being as sharp as we're usually expecting them to be. But these injuries are insane, and I'm lucky, knock on wood, not to have been hit by it yet. But I mean, look at McCaffrey going out. I mean, there's I can't even think of a second one right now, but there's so many number 1 draft pick, number 2 draft picks that are being just out for the season, ACL injuries. So if there's ever been a time for us to actually scout the waiver wire and pay attention to what's out there and what we can and who we can pick up, it's now. I mean, this is a huge thing. I mean, we talked about it earlier with Austin. That running back that he picked up in Robinson, could literally be the linchpin to his entire team, which is already talented enough. But not having to spend a draft pick on a player that is producing like round one per like production, like number one type running back production, and you didn't have to spend a draft pick, you just picked him up the waiver wire. That is so invaluable. So just that example alone could show you that it's going to be crazy. One, how important these free agents are, and two, how many injuries there already have been, and there might be even more coming up on the horizon. So it's got to keep an ear out and an eye out for any possible breakout star. And second thing that I think is really going to outcome this season is, and I hate to say it, and I really do. I think it's Black Lives Matter. I'm just kidding. I think the biggest thing is going to be in-game management, and once again, that's something that y'all already know. But one of my favorite things when it comes to looking at the standings on the NFL website is when you go and look at the true standings or the coach standings, and it breaks it down. And there's one that judges your coach ability, which is how many points you left on your bench compared to the people that you started over your bench. And that is one of the biggest things when it comes to fantasy. Like, people love the draft and, managing the team, but the actual week-to-week decisions when it comes to your roster and some of these matchups, and it's going to be weird. It's going to be a weird season, especially with COVID. So I think it's going to be really very vital to everyone's success that, you're actually looking at who they're playing each week, what the rankings of their positions are against certain defenses, injuries. I mean, there's so many things that can factor in to a small loss becoming a important major victory for you. Because, I mean, as we've seen in these past few weeks, 2 or 3 points can literally be the difference in a W or a big fat L. And we all know that we want to be Jameis Winston eating our dubs on the sideline with our boys. Me and all my homies love eating dubs. But one thing that me and all my homies hate, other than not having your mask on, put it up, is guys that have bench players with 25 points and they were playing a shitty team like the Dolphins or like, the Jets. And then they started someone that was playing the best defense in the league and got 0 points, but then that bench player 25, you lost. That's why you lost. Nothing is more frustrating than that. So I know it's really bare bones, nothing special. But 2 things, most important I think, are waiver wire and just week-to-week management of your roster and just being really conscientious of who is playing who and what the matchups are. So I think Wiley is actually on his way to the Promised Land. Weston, you'll get that Church of Christ reference. He is walking the desert to Sinai to get some water. I don't know if that's code for something, but I guess I can't control Wiley's screen, but I'm going to go ahead and look at the waiver wire just to kill time. See if there's anything else interesting. No fried rice. Picked up Arizona Cardinals. Dropped Russell Gage. I like Russell Gage, but he's out for the year. Nothing interesting. Oh, speaking of, Lily has just had a terrible time with injuries. She had, who was her number 1 draft pick? I know that she had Tariq Cohen of the Bears, and he is now out for the season, which she just dropped. Who did she draft number 1? Because I thought that she had McCaffrey or someone that got out for the year. No, it wasn't McCaffrey. Oh, Saquon. That's right. So Lily, I guess we should have mentioned that Lily has 2 of her first 2 draft picks out for the year. I mean, at this point, I might as well get her OnlyFans because I'm simping so much over her team this year. Because I really am impressed with her management and her draft, and it really sucks because obviously those two guys with Saquon and maybe not Tariq as much, but Tariq's still her number 2 running back. Her top 2 running back choices out for the year, which is now why she's having to start guys like Adrian Peterson. It's kind of a shame because I still think she has a chance to do good this year, but that's really going to be a detriment to how she does. But at the same time, it's also it shows you how well she drafted because she has Todd Gurley and Adrian Peterson still starting for her, which is still a decent. I mean, it's not going to win you any awards, but it's still 1-2. It's still a decent 1-2 punch, especially after losing your top 2 draft picks. So, really unfortunate for Lily. I really do think that this COVID time is going to be kind of weird, though, for us, not just as fans, but as fantasy owners. Not having fans in the stadium is just kind of weird. Seeing your players playing against the Steelers and knowing that there's not going to be any terrible towels and rowdy, drunk Mac Miller fans there is just kind of weird to me. It's just, I understand it obviously. Not to be too much information, but I mean, my own grandma and grandfather and aunt died this past month and a half of COVID, so I obviously understand the reasons why we don't have all the fans there or any fans at some stadiums. But man, it's just weird knowing that, and in college too, is these locations and places that you're usually afraid to play, like Seattle for one. I mean, they're just not the same without that crowd. And I'm wondering how much of an effect that really has on our players, because I'm not saying it's huge, but I mean, I could shave a few points off if the crowd is, making it hard for the offensive line to communicate or the quarterback to communicate to his wide receivers. Or, I mean, we don't know how minuscule and small these things can be. So I really do think Seattle and places like Seattle and Pittsburgh and Jerry World, and I mean, honestly, everywhere but Jacksonville. Let's be honest. Most places can fill up a stadium. I feel like it really does have an effect. So I'm interested to see how that plays on later on into the season too, especially in the playoffs. Well, I said Wiley went to the desert of Sinai earlier, but maybe he went further. Maybe he's traveling to Japan. I'm trying to think if there's anything else to plug at this point. Shout out MGK. His new album's really good. Shout out, Andy Reid for looking like a walrus on the sideline. Man, I'm really running out of material right now. Oh, there was one thing that I actually did want to bring up, though, with Wiley, but I guess I'll bring it up here for a second. Why the fuck do all these teams have, like, all... I don't know. I just had a stroke. All these teams have all these players that I've never heard of now because of COVID. And they're actually, like, performing well, like, fantasy-wise. Well, not well, but they're taking points away and taking stats away from us. It's kind of pissing me off. All these practice squad players. I don't know. I guess it is because of the injuries, too. One thing I have noticed, though, and this is some real in-depth analysis, is that the Cowboys are the only team that have a team doctor with an actual cowboy hat on. Don't ask me why. I won't give you a reason. But it's pretty fitting that the team doctor for the Cowboys looks and plays the part. of a Cowboy. So shout out to that guy. Shout out to my boy Joe Mixon and OBJ. I hope y'all suck for the rest of the season on Christian's team. Shout out OJ Simpson too. Yes. Can't imagine a time when if you were playing fantasy football in the 80s and you had OJ Simpson on your team, and imagine getting like an update. OJ Simpson out for the game. Murder. Right. That is crazy. Speaking of other weird anomalies in football, why are there no cuties ads during these NFL games? It's one of the best films I've seen of the year. It's a French film about young women truly becoming mature adults, and it's one of the best films of the year. So I think that the NFL should recommend it and advertise it more, because it's a really, really good message to send to young girls, especially ones that want to become NFL cheerleaders later on in life. Also, I want to give a shout out to Zappy. He's the quarterback for Houston Baptist University. He had 3 games this year, and if you don't know, Houston Baptist University has the same they're in the same conference as ACU, our favorite Wildcats in the Southland Conference. Zappy might be the next Trevor Lawrence. I'm telling everyone to get on his hype train because no one knows about this guy. And you know why? Because he fucking plays for Houston Baptist. But yeah. Man, I hate you, Wiley, for making me drag this out. Why did you have to go to Jerusalem or wherever the fuck you did? Yeah, shout out Enola Holmes for being the worst movie I've ever seen. Millie Bobby Brown might be the worst actress I've ever watched. She looks like a boy in everything she's ever played in. In Stranger Things 1, 2, and 3, she's so gross and looks like a boy, especially in season 1. I hate her. Yeah, she's also a fan of UNICEF rice, and I don't like UNICEF. I like BLM. Speaking of black, have y'all ever realized black people have sickle cell? Every single one of them. Yep, they all have sickle cell. And they can't live in Colorado. That's why there's no blacks in Colorado, because the sickle cell at a high altitude makes them drink insane amounts of Hennessy. And it's really crazy how I'm just kidding. At this point, this might as well just be a comedy bit and not a TWIF video. Yeah, I was not joking about Enola though. Enola and Millie Bobby Brown, that shit is terrible. Yeah, I don't care. I mean, Austin Black has more piss jugs than she had lines in the first season of Stranger Things. No talent actress. Really should just get into porn or deep fakes. Yeah, if this series was ever monetized, which it never was, it definitely isn't now after this 10-minute spill. What else? Alright, maybe something more about fantasy football. Oh, yes, actually, I did want to bring this up. Let's go. Well, I can't control Wiley's screen, obviously. But if you want to, go and look at the coach rankings, which I mentioned earlier. Tells you how many points you left on your bench compared to who you started. If you go to the rankings, surprisingly, as much as we shit on him, Dopey Cameron is number 1. Kind of crazy. That's probably just because he hasn't changed his lineup ever. So, good job, AI system. Number 2, Christian. Good for Christian. Number 3, Wiley. Number 4, Jackson. Which is crazy considering he's not had a good season so far, really. Or a good start to it. So, also shows you how bad of a draft he had. But Breonna Taylor is number 5. Say her name. Number 6, the 69ers. Say his name. Daniel Hernandez. Matt Stafford and friends, number 7. 8 is the analytics king himself, who knows everything because he has stats. Spencer, yeah, obviously not true. Number 9, very surprising. Weston and Billy. I'm just gonna put that on Billy, considering I don't want to trash on Weston. He's a good Christian, sweet boy. Number 11. This is what I wanted to bring up. Aaron. Aaron is the second worst when it comes to his matchup decisions and who he starts over his bench. And as you can see, he is only outdone by my division rival, who is also 2-1. Or excuse me, yeah, he's 2-1. No fried. So kind of a disparaging thing, division for me. You got Cameron at number 1, me 6, middle of the pack, and then the worst 2 are my other 2 division opponents. What else can we look at? Oh yeah, there's also the breakdown standings, which shows you how you would have done points-wise against everyone else in your league. Like, say that I scored 70 points, which was the second worst in the league this week. But then Cameron scored 30 because he started 8 people on his, that had buys. So, yeah, I beat Cameron, but I had the second worst point outage this week. Therefore, I would have been 1-10 against the rest of the league. So that's how you get your breakdown standings. Number 1, Breonna Taylor. Say her name again. Is 21-12 against opponents, or he would be. Then you got No Fried, and then you got me. We're actually all tied for first. Matt Stafford and friends Lily, despite her terrible injury situation, she has 20-13 record. She's number 4. Then you got Cameron, Jackson, Wiley, Clap 4, Weston, Christian, Spencer, and then Aaron. Which, once again, Aaron, kind of concerned about your effort and your decision making. You're at the bottom of all these standings. Especially if I go to True, you're the worst. True is, I'm just literally just stalling for time at this point. True is a combination of all the other standings combined into one. At number 1, and this is a good, you have to say her name again. Breonna Taylor, number 1 in the overall coaching standings. His true standing is 43. I mean, he's at the top of everything. Record, points for, breakdown, coach. Number 2, you have Cameron. Shout out to his AI for setting his lineup for him. Number 3, me. Who would have guessed? You know, I was at one point called the Fantasy Genius before I was the Fantasy Dumpster Fire. No Fried Rice, number 4. You win some, you lose some, number 4 as well. Wiley, number 5, or excuse me, Wiley, number 6, tied with Lily. Queen, tied for 8th. Excuse me, just for 8th is Trash Jackson. Love you, Jackson. Thank you for showing me Yellow Wolf. Number 9, Clap for Bacon. You're the commissioner. Set a better example for this league. Do better, Kevin. Jameis, Crab and Go. 10. Yeah, Spencer, you gotta start eating dubs. Eating, tasty. Weston, good Christian boy, number 11. And then once again, like I said, Aaron, number 12. He's the worst. So, you know, as much as I clown on Aaron, he's a good manager, but too many holes in that team. Too many. Well, I think Wiley actually might have went to the liquor store or something. I don't know where he is. He told me to keep going for a few minutes. It's been about 15. So at this point, I'm just making this TWIF entirely way too long. If anything, Wiley can just edit this out, but